Hello.
I see Courtney coming on, hopefully soon.
I'm here.
More of an action here.
Well, good evening. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah, yes, we can.
All right, good. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the another meeting of the Township Board, this being August 17th, 2021. I'd like to call the meeting to order, and we'll start out with the Pledge of Allegiance. For all those who can, please rise and face the flag and say the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. I would ask Clerk Guthrie to call the roll.
All right, Supervisor Styka.
Yes, I'm here. I'm virtual due to some health issues. I'm at home, so I'm here in Meridian Township virtually attending the meeting.
Thank you. Clerk Guthrie is here. Treasurer DeShane. Trustee Jackson. Trustee Opsimer. Trustee Sunland. And Trustee Wazinski.
Here, virtually from Meridian Township.
Thank you. The full board is here with
Thank you,
two
everyone.
attending virtually.
Okay, thank you, Clerk Guthrie. We now have a presentation from our Township Manager, Mr. Walsh, dealing with the 2021 Township Semi-Annual Report, which we should have all received one way or another. And I just want to mention it's an excellent report, not only in its content, but how it's laid out, et cetera.
Thank you very much, Mr. Supervisor.
Board. I was just about an hour ago handed the draft final copy of the budget, and I'll be working on that back here in the back room for the next couple of hours. So that's why Manager Perry is up front this evening. I want to just go over a little, touch on our goals of where we're at, and also a few other issues, projects that we're working on at the township, and then answer any questions that you might have. But just going through our goals and how it relates to the semi-annual report. Our first goal that we have is sustainability, and what are we doing in that area? And really we're focusing on three areas right now, and one being, of course, solar. And this is our third year of our solar project that was started really at the impetus of the supervisor 3 years ago, who asked that $100,000 be put into the budget. And I think that since then, there's been a movement from the entire board to move in that direction. We've had $100,000 incrementally up to $200,000, and then was going to be $200,000 this past year, and I think Trustee Opsimer asked that increase to $300,000. So we've put 1, 2, and 3. So we have $600,000 invested in solar so far, and we're approximately, our goal is to get to 100% in the next 10 years, and we're approximately at 60% already with those projects. The second component of our sustainability is electric cars. And right now we just found out that we're going to be we were accepted to work with Consumers Energy on a study to look at what what electric vehicles would look like in Meridian Township. And that we're a long ways from the answer to that, but we're going to be working with consumers in conjunction with them. So that's the second component right now of sustainability. And the third one is we're seeking a $500,000 grant from Eagle, and that's to completely overhaul our recycling center and to bring it into the next century and beyond. Again, that's a grant request that we're making. That's the efforts of the Green Team and Mr. Harvey. It's a 20% match. We I don't even know if we filed that yet. We're in the throes of filing. It's soon. So it hasn't even been filed yet. But those are the three things: solar, electric cars, and the recycling center. Moving on to DEI, we actually had our first training session with DEI with the management team. This is led by Director Tehoff and the committee that's working on that, which is, I believe, trustee, I don't have the list in front of me, but I believe it's Trustee Wazinski, Jackson, and maybe Opsummer, I think are the three that are working with that. I don't want to say assigned, but we're working as a group. We're making good headway. We had an excellent training session. I believe it was a 5-hour training session, maybe 4, that we had a week ago. The next one is working on the village of Okemos and the village of Hazlet on improvements and trying to go vertical this year. You know, it's a difficult time in any kind of development, any kind of public-private partnership to be moving forward on a project. Right now, we are at really the crossroads with the Village of Okemos project. We have asked them for, through the DDA and really through the board, we've asked the developers what is the final number that you need in a public-private partnership. I don't want to go too far into TIF financing tonight, but TIF financing is a huge component of this project. It's a huge component across the state of Michigan in any large development at a downtown. But we're working on that, and we are meeting with the developers on Monday, the 23rd, to hopefully get that response. Because in fairness to the Township Board and the DDA and the EDC, and most importantly the public, we need an answer from them exactly what it is. What's up with the power lines? What's up with the utilities? All those questions that we need to gather for the board, because at the end of the day, it's going to be the board that's going to make that decision. The village of Hazlet, probably moving along quicker than the village of Okemos right now with the Pine Village project. We're still hoping to see them break ground on demolition here soon. That'll be the 2 buildings, the building on the far west side of the property and the old L&L grocery store. Both of those buildings will be coming down. The redevelopment's about a 10-acre upscale senior living development. 5 is the roads. Again, great progress under the direction of Manager Perry. We're doing 18 miles this year. This is our year 2. The millage was passed in 19, so year 2020 was the first year, and 2021, of course, being the second year. We have about 40% of this year's project accomplished. Right now we're doing some toppings, which the base is down. We're topping them off and finishing them. That occurred yesterday in the Edison and Potter area, which is exciting to see up in Hazlet, because this is a project that we wanted to do 6 years ago, and 5 years ago, and 4 years ago. But unfortunately, there was a big drain project that occurred up there and slowed the project down because we didn't want to put all new roads in, then have the drain project come in. So we're about 40% of the way through. Please check. We update the website every day on where we are with the local road program, so check it if you have any questions. Tacoma Hill is going to see some shoulder work coming up. Sapphire and Skyline and Riverwood neighborhoods are going to see some work here also in the next few days. Goal number 6 is broadband. As you know, we're working with the county on joining them on a survey. We expect that to go forward in the month of September. Phase 1 and 2 of the Lake Lansing to MSU pathway, bidding that out this year, and construction will occur next year. So you'll see phases 1 and 2 completed in 2022, and that'll go all the way from basically the music building at Shaw along the riverfront and all the way to the interurban. Phase 1 and 2. Right now what we're doing is we're widening the area between Okemos Road, or on Okemos Road, between the service center north to the interurban. If you go by there, that area is being widened. That's for the future of the MSU to Lake Lansing pathway. So phase 1 and 2 bid this year and construction next year. Number 8 is the new signage. And obviously, if you look at the entry signs to the township that were put in the mid-70s, it's time to upgrade those. The design is complete. We're ready to go. We need the locations and the easements, and that's what's holding us up. But we have some really nice, attractive signage to go up. You're really going to like it. I think the community's going to really like it. But it's tough finding the right locations. And that's going to hold that project up for some time. Number 9, the website. We're moving right along with it, and the rollout, the rollout will occur in October. And again, I'm just going down your list of your goals. And finally, the number 10 is the pension and staffing. And just a little bit of a little sneak peek into the budget, I guess, would fall under here. Our pension liability, we're required to pay our ARC, actuarial required contribution, ARC. The ARC for next year is $3.2 million. And I can tell you, and if you add on the $1.5 million to that from the millage from 2017, you're at 4.7. We're going to recommend a $5.2 million contribution in next year's budget. You'll see that in about 3 weeks. The reason being is that is based on a 5.35 rate of return. And remember, we've said we're not going with MERS. We're going to try to adjust to a 5.35. That's going to require a $5.2 million pension contribution. We're only required to put 3.2. Not only are we keeping our promise of what we said we would do, we're going beyond that. Again, that's going to be the recommendation in the budget. Just a few other items of note this evening that parallel with the the semi-annual report. The focus of the budget that's coming up in 3 weeks, it's a $55 million budget. Like I said, I just have the copy that came off the printer about an hour ago. There's really 5 components that we're looking at with a budget. I'm not going to go into each, I'll just highlight what they are. The focus of this budget will be local roads, public safety, IT, the redevelopment fund, and the pension and legacy cost. Those are going to be the 5 areas that we attack. And the one that might surprise you is the IT. Our IT system is failing. We really need to invest heavily in our IT system here across all departments. Our system is, according to the director, a C-, D+ right now where we're at, and that might be favorable. We really need to us. We have a $500,000 contribution in next year's budget to come in and overhaul our IT system. And that's going to be critical to the future of this township. Again, what we do, we invest. We keep investing. And then a redevelopment fund, we're looking at a major contribution to the redevelopment fund to help support, potentially help support in a public-private partnership in the peak areas. The Daniels Drain is going to be a component of course, of the budget. I already mentioned IT. The marketplace is just booming. It really is like the epicenter as we'd hoped that it would be of the community, right in the center of this town. And if you haven't been there on a Saturday or a Wednesday, it's just really, really great. Census numbers are out. Everybody's marveling at Meridian Township census numbers, 11% growth. Outstanding for the township, and our neighbors have seen a decline. And what I want to do is focus on what can we do as Meridian Township instead of boasting and 11% and great and good controlled smart growth, and we're still protecting the east side of the community. We have great education, strong parks, great public safety. That's all wonderful. But how can we lift up our neighbors? How can we work with the city of East Lansing and make sure that in 10 years their numbers go up as well? Because we're all one here in Ingham County. So that's going to be a focus too of Meridian Township of how do we partner with our neighbors, because both of them had negative numbers. And we want to make sure that we're all positive 10 years from now. The survey will be back in 2 weeks. You'll have your results from the survey. If you haven't been out to the Harris Nature Center, stop out and see the new pavilion and the restroom. The master plan, as you know, communities usually wait about 10 to 15 years to upgrade their master plans. It's suggested that we do it in 5. Our 5th year is 2022. And there will be money in the budget that's recommended, of course, for updating the master plan in 2022. And finally, I want to just share a little quick story with you. I was at Midwest Power yesterday, and saw the owner of Midwest Power and was speaking with him about his future plans. And he said, you know what? There was a young lady that's been coming here and talking to me about my plans and what I'm going to do and all of that. It's been incredible. He said her name is Amber. I said, that's just the grand slam of economic development. When I have not even had a conversation with Director Clark about that. just goes to the point of how we're strengthening our team around here every day. I just thought that was really something you all should know. So that concludes my report. I will pass on my township manager report as well. I think I've had enough time here this evening, but happy to answer any questions, Mr. Supervisor.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I don't have any questions. Board members, please raise your hand high so I can see the virtual broadcast. Mr. Opposite.
Thank you, Supervisor Stika. First, I just want to also note that I was at Midwest Power about 3 weeks ago and also spoke with the owner. He was fixing my chainsaw and brought out a new bar for me that I had ordered, and he also mentioned Director Clark and some of the sites, and we chatted for a minute about some of the other sites that he's looking at, including Solden. So I just wanted to note that he speaks very highly of Director Clark, as the manager noted. I did have a quick technical question for probably Deputy Manager Perry, since it's broadband, but either one of you feel free to chime in. So the scope of the assessment consultant that we're looking at hiring, is that just building the network, or does it go beyond building the network and into the operations and logistics?
It's really baseline. There'll be a component that's survey-based to find out basically what the level is in the community and the county at whole, and then we'll start to talk about what are some of the opportunities for us and to expand the network or fill those gaps. And then from there, I think would be a second component that we would talk about, what are those and how would those be operated, and get into some of those additional details.
So this is technically a gap assessment.
Right.
So this is more,
This is our baseline.
okay, so we're not looking at what it would actually take to build a network. We're already in this assessment.
It could roll into that, but this is not how it's set up currently.
Okay. And then just one other thought that I had, and forgive me if I missed anything. Have we done anything for unveiling for the solar at the service center?
No, we haven't.
Now, there's really, there was some home TV, did some great coverage. Actually, the installers did some drone footage of it. So that's available probably on YouTube right now if you wanted to go see it. But because of where it's located, there's really nothing to see per se, because it's a roof system. So you could walk up and look at the meter, but that's about all you'd see from the ground.
Okay. I mean, it is a pretty remarkable accomplishment to convert that whole facility. So just wondered if there was any internal talks. And I don't know if they still had scaffolding or something where people could
really,
get a sneak peek.
Yeah, I don't even want to say how you get on the roof, but there's a way that it's really not available for the public.
Okay, so there's no safe access to really.
It's still possible, though, to have some sort of, have the green team and some others in the group. We could have some event down there. It's a good point.
Yeah, I'm not the best at those. I normally can't make the midday ribbon cutting, so by all means, don't do it on my behalf. But it is a tremendous accomplishment for the community, and the array looks really good on the service center. And logistically, having it 100% renewable now is quite the feat. So, just something that stood out to me. But thank you for the report.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Stika. You mentioned the census numbers. As the census numbers increase, and the services increase to meet that demand, do we take a look at the staff level and how we're able to service the community? And in conjunction with that, kind of along the same question, I read in here that a staff wage study was conducted. Does all of that go in line together in regards to staffing and servicing the community?
Well, we're always looking at that. So the answer is yes. But of course, you can only look at it every 10 years because that's when you have your census come out. And I didn't want to get too far into the budget this evening, but one of the areas that you really look at that, Madam Clerk, is in the area of public safety. That's really the area, our department, the Treasurer's Department, other departments, community planning and development, wouldn't require more staffing because we have a few more hundred homes in the community, but perhaps public safety. And we are going to be requesting an additional firefighter paramedic position which then would increase us by 10% from where we were just 4 years ago, and also a position back in the police department. So yes, the answer is yes and yes. We do look at it, and we are making adjustments as we go along. But most of that is benchmarked against other communities with like populations.
And you did mention being partners with our other communities and lifting them up and all of that goodwill sort of stuff. Is there not, I think I saw the treasurer's report in here for that quarterly report. Isn't there a large contribution from Meridian Township that goes into the countywide millages and mutual aid agreements and other types of services that we provide? But in your treasurer's report, isn't there a large number that comes from Meridian Township that assists those other communities in regards to those millages? Because I don't know if that's a treasurer DeShane question or if that's a manager question or just making a point.
Let me answer it. I have the numbers right here. Of the $106,743,000 we got last year, $87 million of that went right out the door, and $11 million of that was to Ingham County. So we make a significant contribution. Essentially, 82% of every dollar we receive, we distribute to local agencies, primarily education, but also the county, cattle, the airport authority. Yes, we do. We're very much a contributor to the well-being of the entire region.
So I guess, Manager Walsh, were you thinking outside that scope and other ways in which we can partner with them? Not to put you on the spot or anything like that.
No, it's a very good question. It's a fair question. Yeah, we're actually a donor to everyone else because of our tax base. I think the county's $8 billion, and I think Meridian Township's $2 billion of that. So we're a very strong part of the economic base of the entire county. When I talk about lifting up and helping and supporting, those are all non-financial ways. I'm thinking about how do we sit down regionally and talk about Census 2030 and what 3 steps, and I don't have the answers. I only know it's something we may want to collaborate on. Get a group together and say, okay, our goal is in 2030 that we all rise up, okay? And what 3 steps can we take to make that happen?
Okay, thank you. And then in the report, I wanted to commend Chief Plaga and the police department on having twice the level of female hires versus the national average, and I want to commend you for that. And I also want to commend Manager Walsh for having a leadership team that is 50% female. I appreciate having a leadership team that is pretty even keel. So those are my last comments about the report. Thank you for providing that tonight.
Thank you. I think if you take a look at our entire management team in the Township Board, it's 52 to 48% or 51-49. It's split right down the middle. I'm very proud of that, and thank you for acknowledging it. Did we lose the
supervisor?
I think we may have lost Supervisor Stika. So should I call on Pat Jackson, or should I make a motion to have a Supervisor Pro Tem in the absence of Supervisor Stika?
You're the acting chair right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
So as the acting chair, do you mind if I call Supervisor Pro Tem before we take your question?
Whatever you think is best.
All right. I'm going to make a motion to appoint a Supervisor Pro Tem in the absence of Supervisor Stika if he doesn't come back, or if we lose him again. Anybody like to second that motion? Kathy? Do we need to do a roll call vote? Or
no, just show of hands.
Okay, show of hands. All right, thank you.
And Ms. Wazinski's hand is up as well.
Thank you, Courtney.
Okay, so I will call on Trustee Jackson to ask her question of Manager Walsh.
Yes, thank you. Several mentions have been made of Director Clark and her work for the township. I would first of all remind the board that we also got very positive comments about her work from the owners, I believe, of the Meridian Company, and involved with the rezoning that we have on our agenda tonight. But I guess at this point, I would also note that I have been talking with Director Clark, and I hope to bring back the proposal for a smart zone, or our participation in the regional smart zone proposal that she presented to the board, I think, twice before. And that becomes even more significant. First of all, taking into account the manager's calls for more regional participation and cooperation in elevating the status and the population, particularly in this case of the region, our regional partners like East Lansing and Lansing, the university, and others that are participating in the smart zone. And also to note that LEAP, which is an economic development agency that I represent, on whose board I represent Meridian Township, is an administrator, one of that grant, the Smart Zone program, and that Director Clark has been working very closely with them to bring that idea to Meridian Township, and so we've had even more support for the idea. I hope we can convince the board that it's a good idea for Meridian Township, and it would help us in achieving Mr. Walsh's idea of working more cooperatively and better with our partners in the area.
Thank you, Trustee Jackson. Manager Walsh, did you have anything on that?
I don't. Just my final comment is the census numbers are really, really important, and sometimes they get lost in the shuffle of everything that's going on. Anytime a major retail commercial development looks at going into a community, growth is a number one issue. That, rooftops, people, that's one of the main things that companies look at, corporations, retail, and to have a community of 40,000 and still have double digit. It's one thing if you're 2,000 population and you go up double digit, but when you're 40,000, which we were before we started this, and went up 10%, and for those that say overdeveloped, it's a 1% growth per year over 10 years. So it's really smart, controlled growth. So that's all I have. Thank you very much for your attention and questions tonight, and thank you to the management team for putting this all together. Thank you.
Thank you, Manager Walsh.
I am back, by the way. There's something crazy going on with my computer, but I am back.
So, Mr. Supervisor, we just concluded agenda item 4A. If you want to go on to agenda item 5, citizens addressing.
Yes, I was actually able to hear the end of 4A. Thank you.
Excellent.
All right. Next is the citizens addressing agenda items and non-agenda items. And I know there are some people present in the audience that they want to speak. If they do, they come to the podium. They have 3 minutes. Introduce themselves, give their address, and please limit your comments to the board in general, not any individuals. And we look forward to hearing from people.
Yes, and we have a card, Mr. Supervisor, from Lori Leckler.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. My husband and I reside at 3833 Dobie Road. We live across the street from Ingham County Medical. We've been there for 21 years. When we came here from St. Lucia in the British West Indies, I found the state inspector and I said, will you please take a look at this house for me? And he said, buy this house. This house has great bones. And I said, okay. And we got here in January with all of our summer clothes and tents. And from there, we started working on this house. And we have done an awful lot. And then our house started looking like a museum, and then it started looking like a B&B, and Peter did a lot of woodwork, and we have a lot of crown molding, and we have a 50-year roof. We have a rock basement. We have 20 gardens. We have a fenced yard. We have a house that took 5 years to build. It has so much fancy stuff in it. It's absolutely ridiculous, and it's highly unique. People love our property. And then it started, can we stay at your house? Will you make some meals for us? Can we have our anniversary here? Can we spend a couple of nights? Well, then we sponsored some students from MSU every year, and then can my mom and dad stay here? And everybody just loves this property. And then we became friends with the people across the street, and the old people would come over, and I would hang violins in the front yard, which is weird, but I love violins. I'm an artist. I've painted all over the world, so I filled the house with faux and murals and all sorts of Renaissance pieces, and we're very proud of our property. And we built a Frank Lloyd Wright porch, and we've done stained glass all over, and it's turned out really well with our 5 bedrooms. And then some people started saying, wouldn't it be nice if your house was a B&B? And he cooks better than I do, and I thought, yeah, okay, that'd be good. And then we decided that we were getting a little bit older, so we thought maybe we'd move. So we had talked to a real estate lady, and she had a couple people come and look at her house, and both sets of people said, can this please be a B&B? Can you get permission to make this house into a B&B? And we said, well, we don't know, because I don't think there are any B&Bs. There's a really nice one in East Lansing. But Peter and I love B&Bs. We like comfort and someplace just to relax with good parking. We believe in electric cars. We have a 220 house, and we're trying to find out how to ask for permission to get our house status as B&B. Okay, and if you have any questions, I think it's too late, but thank you very much. Is that okay? Yes. All right.
You are muted, Mr. Supervisor.
Not sure if
he's frozen
I think
now.
he's frozen now, yep.
Okay. All right. Thank you to the members of the public who spoke. We are now on to item number 6, which is the Township Manager's Report, which he has yielded the time to the board, given the presentation. So we are now on to item number 7, which is board member reports of activities and announcements. Who would like to go first this evening? Treasurer DeShane.
Thank you. Because we can't hear from the supervisor, I will say to the public what he would say, which is we don't respond directly to public comments, but you signed in here and we have your name, and I'm confident some on the staff will get back to you. Thank you for coming to the meeting today. On last week, August 5th, I attended the Economic Development Corporation meeting for August. It's going strong, led very ably by Director Clark. On the 9th, a week ago, I attended the management team DEI training on overcoming implicit bias. Excellent training, and we're looking forward to a follow-up to that, but it was well attended, and many board members were there as well, so excellent training. Coming up this week, tomorrow is the CADA Board of Directors meeting at 4 o'clock at the old Sears store at Frandor. It's open to the public. Thursday morning, 7:30 is the Brownfields Redevelopment Authority meeting, which I'm not on, but I attended. There's a lot going on in Brownfields right now, and if you care about development, you might want to be at that meeting. And then manager mentioned earlier the Daniels Drain meeting coming up. That's the 26th, a week from Thursday. It's a very important meeting, particularly if you live in Forest Hills, Cornell Woods, that whole area south of Grand River, the ponds and behind that. Many residents have reached out to the board and staff about this. There's concerns, lots of rumors out there, but please come to that meeting. The Drain Commission will be there. Director Perry will be there. We'll give everyone as much information as we have on the Daniels Drain. And so before you pass judgment on it or get worried about a huge tax assessment, please come to that meeting. We'll give as much information as we have at that time. If you don't mind, I would like to go right in to discuss the treasurer's report, which is in the board packet. And it's been a while since I've had one of these in here. Typically, this would be here in July, but having lost my deputy July 1st, it took us a little longer to put this one together. If you turn to page 58 of the board packet, you'll see the distribution for 2020 that we talked about earlier, $106,745,000, and all but 3 of those line items were outside groups: state education, schools, Ingham County, as well as cattle, the airport, LCC. Taxes, actually, before you go on there, I will say, if you move further down the report, the next page, you'll see our fixed investments at $12,500,000, a little bit less than past times. We've been closer to $15 million, a little bit more on the next page in liquid investments, and that's largely because interest rates are terrible right now. 2 years ago, we were getting about 250 basis points, 2.5%. Right now, we're getting about 11 basis points, so 0.1%. So rates are really extremely low. They've got to go up, and with fears of inflation that are out there now, they're likely to go up certainly in 2022. So I've taken a wait and see. Our money is safe, but it's in non-fixed investments right now, hoping for some kind of break on interest rates. And lastly, taxes are due 4 weeks from now. They're due the 14th of September, summer taxes. We did hear last week at the Rotary meeting from Greg Todd, the Ingham County Administrator, that the county has set aside $1 million in mortgage relief for Ingham County residents. And we're looking for more information on that. If you are concerned about paying your mortgage or having issues with taxes, please contact us. We'll put you in touch with the county and that program that's being administered through Capital Area Community Services. So it's $1 million of new money to help out Ingham County residents who are having trouble through the pandemic. There are families that are really struggling right now. This has been a really tough year and a half. And there is help out there through Ingham County. So contact the Treasurer's Office, 853-4140, and we'll share with you what we have, and we'll put you on the list, and we know more, we'll share that with you as well. That's my report. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Treasurer Duchesne. Other board
Thank
members?
you. Thank you. I'm sorry about the my computer was disconnected for a while. A lot of things were undone and everything. I'm sorry, but I'm back. Other members of the board, any reports, activities? Good.
Thank you, Supervisor Steinka. Yesterday morning on Monday, I attended the Garden Club Awards ceremony. They received an award from the Michigan Community Landscape Beautification Award. And our Senator Hertel was there, and Representative Brixey was there to also give them an award that was a recognition award that was signed by the governor. And so that was a special event. It was held at the post office. It was for their landscape project at the post office. And so I commend the Meridian Garden Club and all the work that they do. I love their gardens around the township, and I visit them often, and my landscaping at my house has been redone in front to mirror some of the gardens that the Garden Club has done. And so I'm happy about that because they're bee friendly now at my house instead of deer friendly, dare I say. So thank you to the Garden Club for that inspiration at my own home. I appreciate that. Probably, I don't know, maybe unintended, I don't know. I also attended the DEI implicit bias training. I found it was very insightful and helpful, and we had these breakout sessions, and I was in a breakout session with Manager Walsh in the first session, and I about freaked out because we were in the same breakout session. But it was a good session, wasn't it, Frank? yeah, I thought it was highly beneficial for the team, and I'm looking forward to seeing more leadership on DEI efforts from our HR director, Abby Tehoff. She's doing a wonderful job on that. I appreciate her efforts on that and bringing that to the rest of the staff at Meridian Township, and including some board members. I also attended the de-escalation communication training from the police department. That was an amazing session that they provided. I know they're going to be working with Home TV and creating a video for staff members and possibly board members who weren't able to attend. And it's something that I spoke with my staff about in the clerk's office in regards to possibly sharing this with our chairs and co-chairs at our polling locations. Today we had an upset resident come in and was very demanding in his questions about his voter registration, and it just re-solidified in my mind that we needed to have this training for our chairs and co-chairs if they have this happen at polling locations. So I was very glad to attend that, and happy that we have that for the staff at Meridian Township. Next week, I'll be attending the Communications Commission meeting. It's Wednesday at 6 p.m. right here in the Township Hall at the Administrative Conference Room. And then the CRC, they canceled their August and September meeting. Their next meeting is October 13th. I am the board liaison for that, and so I'll look forward to being at that. And then I'm also working with the superintendents, looking at our polling location sites, trying to work together as much as possible to get the polling locations out of the elementary schools and into some other locations. And so we met with Superintendent Steve Cook this week, and we're just going to continue to work together until we can figure out a solution in the township to try and do that. So I'm happy to see progress in that area. And then in regards to Smart Zone, since Trustee Jackson did mention that, if that were to come before the board, I have spoken with Amber on several occasions about Smart Zone, trying to get a better understanding of it, and so I appreciate her time with that. And she actually set up a tour with the Van Camp building next week, and so I'll be touring that building so I can have a better understanding of other tech that's out there, and an understanding of what she's talking about when she's giving a presentation to the board. That's my report.
Thank you. Other board members? Yes, Courtney, please.
Thank you, Supervisor. I do have a couple updates. I also attended the diversity, equity, inclusion training that was put on by the Department of Civil Rights, and I think they did do a fantastic job and had a good understanding of municipal governments and how we can implement some change to ensure that Meridian is equitable and inclusive. Also attended the Groundwater Management Board meeting just this past Wednesday. They are working on updated or improvements to the 2009 groundwater management model. What this does is we Meridian are within a regional aquifer, the Saginaw Formation, and the model estimates water levels within the model area, and then it compares it to wells levels as well as river water levels. It's important because it helps track for our wellhead protection plan and anything that might be compromising that. It also allows us to confirm where water is coming from and how it gets to each one of our wells, and investigates contamination movement, as well as the effects on changing pumpage and or changing recharge within the area, and knowing the flooding that has happened over the past couple of weeks. These are just really important efforts. Proud to say that our chief engineer here at Meridian Township, Giannis Israeli, was elected the secretary and treasurer at the Groundwater Management Board, so he'll be representing not just as a member but also as the secretary and treasurer. We did have an environmental commission meeting second Wednesday of this month. Director Schmidt attended yet again and was able to answer a lot of questions that we had as commission members on upcoming efforts and his thoughts and his input on that. We also had a resolution to honor Rose Badnays, who was a commission member for many years. She headed up the environmental justice work group and retired from the commission. And we'll talk a little bit later about a recommendation for a new commission member. We also have, and I don't know if the clerk mentioned this, but we have an election commission meeting coming up on August 26th. That's my report.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Board members? See hands. Okay. And we'll move on to the approval of the agenda. Your motion. Trustee Osler.
I move to approve the agenda.
Support.
Supported by Trader. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any noes? Okay, we have an agenda. First, we have the consent agenda. Consent agenda consists of communications. Our minutes from August 3 and August 9. August 3 was a regular meeting, and August 9 was the joint meeting that we held with the Planning Commission. Then we have our bills. We set the date of September 7th for our budget hearing, which allows the public to go forward and speak about the budget. We're also approving a request to purchase a MERS generic credited service for an employee. And lastly, a quality, we're approving the quarterly treasurer's report given by Treasurer Duchesne. Is there a motion? Richard.
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Support.
Supported by Trustee Jackson, I believe it was. Yes, it was. Okay. We need a roll call.
Treasurer Duchesne?
Yes.
Yes. Trustee Jackson?
Yes.
Trustee Opsmer?
Yes.
Trustee Sunland?
Yes.
Trustee Wazinski? You're muted, Trustee Wazinski.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Supervisor Stajka?
Yes. Yes.
And Clerk Guthrie votes yes. Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you all. Thank you all. No questions for today. No hearings. We now move on to an action items. The first one, and we have seen it a number of times, this is rezoning number 21050. M&J Management, rezone approximately 5-acre parcel located at 1999 Saginaw Highway from C2 or commercial to I, industrial. And this will be for the final adoption. As I said, we've seen this several times. Is there a motion? Is there a motion? Trustee Jackson.
I move to adopt a resolution approving for final adoption zoning number 21050, an ordinance to rezone approximately 5 acres of land at 1999 Saginaw Highway from C2 commercial to I industrial for the following reasons. The proposed rezoning to I industrial is consistent with the land uses called for on the site in the 2017 master plan for land use adopted by the township.
Support.
Is there support for that motion?
Support.
Support.
Councilor had his hand up first. Great. Any discussion, Ms. Jackson?
Only to remind the board that this is an instance where the zoning in this area or at this property was changed several years ago. The owners have come back and asked to return it to its original industrial zoning, and the Planning Commission has approved this rezoning requests and recommends that the board does the same.
Anyone else? Treasurer.
follow up on trustee Jackson just said. One of the first things this board did, or most of us did 5 years ago, was to approve this rezoning. And here we are back, putting it back the way it is. And it just shows this board, we act in our best interest at the time and the interest of the public. That changes. And sometimes there are reasons to completely reverse what we did 5 years ago. And this is a great example of that. It's important for the board to be able to look at that and say, well, we acted with good information back then, but it's time to reverse that action.
Good comments. Anyone else? Do we need a vote? Clerk Guthrie.
Trustee Jackson?
Yes.
Trustee Opsimer?
Yes.
Trustee Sunland?
Yes.
Trustee Wazinski?
Yes.
Supervisor Stika?
Yes.
Supervisor Stika votes yes.
Clerk Guthrie votes yes. Treasurer DeShane?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
I couldn't tell whether you were calling on me or Ms. Sunland at that point, Clerk.
It's okay.
All right. That passes, as you said, 7-0. We now move on to B, which is the rezoning number 21030, New China of Michigan. Request to rezone 0.42 acre parcel at 5114 Jodan Drive from RC, which is a multiple family residential category, with a maximum of 14 units per acre, to RCC, a multiple family residential, which is a maximum 34 per acre. This is also up for final adoption. We've seen it before. Treasurer.
I move to adopt the resolution approving for final adoption rezoning number 21030, in ordinance to rezone approximately 0.42 acre parcel located at 5114 Jodan Drive from RC, multiple family maximum 14 dwelling units per acre, to RC, multiple family 34 dwelling units per acre, with a condition.
Support. Ms. Jackson supports. You want to say anything more about it, Mr. Treasurer?
I'd like to have Director Schmidt come up and talk to us about that condition one more time, because it's all contingent upon that condition. Director Schmidt?
Good evening. The condition of the request this evening is that the area at the northern, it's actually 108 feet, I believe, be rezoned back to a single-family district, and they have to make that submission within 30 days of the approval. They've actually already made the submission. The condition essentially is being met already, but we are going through the formal process to rezone that. We will start that process here in the next, I believe we have everything we need, so we'll get the notice ready and have it to the Planning Commission in the near future to start that process.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you. I guess we should vote. This is for final adoption.
Trustee Opsimer?
Yes.
Trustee Sunland?
Yes.
Trustee Wazinski?
Yes.
Supervisor Stika?
Yes.
Clerk Guthrie votes yes. Treasurer DeShane?
Yes.
Trustee Jackson?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you. We now come to the Environmental Commission appointment. There's a vacancy that occurred on the Environmental Commission. The Commission itself has a long history of it's not by rule or anything, just by the way they've done it over the past, of recommending people for their appointments when they come up, and then the supervisor reviews them and makes a recommendation to this board, and I've recommended, based on the recommendation of the Commission, Valerie Lafferty to take a seat at the Commission. I look forward to a motion. Oh, sorry. I'm looking at one screen, not the other.
I know, I'm really sorry.
You're great.
I move to approve the appointment of Valerie Lafferty to the Environmental Commission for a term ending 12/31/2022.
Thank you. Is there a second for that?
Support.
I can't quite move into a small screen. If you're seconding it, speak up, please.
Support.
Trustee Jackson?
All right, thank you. Is there any need to discuss it further, Ms. Wazinski?
I would just like to say that we had 5 applications for this position, and it continues to impress me that our residents are so very involved and want to be a part of and work towards all of the commissions that we work on. So we had 5 excellent applicants, and the board or the commission did agree that Ms. Lackaby should be recommended to you, Supervisor. She's had a lot of involvement already. She attends quite a few of the Environmental Commission meetings. She served on the Planning Commission, also helped with the master plan revisions. He continues to serve on other commissions like the Energy Team and Green Dialogue. She's really already proven her commitment to the commission, and we're excited for her to join.
Very good. Anyone else? Not seeing any hands. We need a vote.
Trustee Sumlin?
Yes.
Trustee Wazinski?
Yes. Yes.
Supervisor Stika?
Yes. Yes.
Clerk Guthrie votes yes. Treasurer DeShane?
Yes.
Yes.
Trustee Jackson?
Yes.
And Trustee Opsimer?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you. Thank you, and we welcome Ms. Valerie Lappy to the commission. And I'm sure the clerk will reach out for swearing in, etc. We now go on to discussion items, and they're 2, but more or less 1. The first one is just a report of the summary of our joint meeting, and I believe that's going to be done by our planning director. Is that correct?
So briefly, I personally thought this was a very productive meeting, and this is something that I've always recommended in every community I've worked in, that the Planning Commission and the elected body get together at least on an annual basis to talk. Because there are always policy-related questions that bounce back and forth between the two boards that it always helps to be in a room and talk about them. And especially given the last 18 months being partially remote and remote, it's a little more difficult to have those conversations. But very productive meeting. There were 3 main topics that we're focused on at the meeting: the mixed-use plan unit development, which is also the next item on your agenda, the sign ordinance update, and the form-based code update. Staff continues to work with the subcommittee of the Planning Commission on the sign ordinance update. We're hoping to schedule a meeting here in the next week, 10 days, to go through a, call it 60% draft, 75% draft. Give the subcommittee some things to chew on and think about and work on while staff finishes up the remaining revisions to the sort of content of the ordinance. We will then pick up on the form-based code and work with the Planning Commission subcommittee on that. But most notably is the MUPUD ordinance update. This was approved by the Planning Commission earlier this summer, referred to the Township Board, and the Township Board then decided it was a good time to have a joint meeting. So that was a good topic of discussion. I think there was a large amount of, most of the discussion focused around the amenities and the process for adding those and how they would be addressed and things of that nature. And with that said, I'd be happy to answer any questions about the meeting. But then the next item on your agenda this evening is further discussion of how the Township Board would like to proceed with that MUPUD ordinance.
Thank you. Well, first of all, I mentioned that I truly appreciate the outstanding planning commission that we have. The work that they do is phenomenal. Your work with them and your staff will work with them is also phenomenal. And this meeting helped bring that to the fore. We are very lucky in this community to have the people that we have working on planning within our community. The main thrust ended up being, as you said, the mixed-use plan unit development, because that's the one that's furthest along, ready to go, but the other ones you mentioned are also critical. And I know that the Planning Commission ahead of it next year has a huge task with updating or maybe revising, et cetera, our long-range 5-year plan. So we look forward to hearing from them and meeting more often with them with regard to that. Any board members have any questions or comments they want to raise with regard to the summary of what happened at our special meeting?
Treasurer DeShane has his hand raised.
Thank you for setting that up. It's a very productive meeting. I would like to see us get these on the schedule so that we are meeting at least twice a year, if not 3 times a year, with the Planning Commission. It was productive. We need to work hand in glove with our Planning Commission, and I think if we put it on the agenda for at least one more meeting yet this year, we'll set that precedent and maybe shoot for even 3 meetings next year. But thank you for putting it together. It was productive and very informative for me as a board member.
I would say that rather than have an arbitrary date, quarterly or whatever, we would do it perhaps as many as 3 times a year, but do it as significant things are coming forward that require even closer attention, like this one did. I think it was extremely beneficial that we had topics that have been on all of our minds for some time. Other board members? Yes, Mr. Osler.
Yeah, so we had talked about at that joint meeting having the form-based code item on our agenda, and I don't see it tonight, so I thought I would just reiterate my thoughts on that and where I think we should go with that, which is, I fully support proceeding with form-based code and looking at where to implement it. I would still like to see it implemented in the 3 PICAs, possibly the mall area, as we've designated that area in the mixed-use MUPUD ordinance amendment, and then also segments of the corridor. My only 2 concerns, again, are not waiving the special use permit requirement for buildings or developments in excess of 25,000 square feet, and I think we need to work through, do we apply the front yard setback to the curb or the right-of-way, or do we use those service drives to create a little bit more buffer and keep those street trees so that those front, if you're going to have a coffee shop like Panera is a great example because they just built there. If that patio on the front of Panera were closer to Grand River, it would not be as nice to sit there, right? Like the traffic volume is just going to be so in your face. So that was just one thing that stood out to me when I looked. They're not using, as it's currently drafted, we're not using those service drives to elongate that setback. And I think when we look at, how do you convert it over time, right now we create those service drives and you can pull left or right. You've got double-sided parking, so that front side, that parking in front of the building could be converted to, the patio area and the streetscape and that segment, and then you could still have diagonal parking either in front of it or on the roadside. You could structure it either way, but I think that is something worth pursuing. And then I think, there's questions of, do we even have side yard setbacks? Do we try to go with a more traditional design where the buildings actually abut, or do we still have site by site, non-contiguous development? So I think there's some questions as to how we implement it in a very different community, but I do want to see us pursue it. So
It definitely will be pursued. That's for sure. Anyone else? Okay, I want to thank you for that. Yes, Courtney Wazinski, please.
Sorry, Supervisor, just a couple questions or comments to the MUPUD ordinance. 2 things that spoke to me. One was inclusion by the directors for affordable housing and taking that into account, making sure that's appropriately accounted for, as well as looking at the definition of a minor revision. To speak to Trustee Opsmer, I agree that I would like, further conversation about form-based code, but a little apprehensive to maybe our PICA areas, but specifically to our downtown Okemos. So I just wanted to mention those, and I would also support additional joint board meetings in the future.
All right. Before we go on to getting into more detail on the MUPUD, Guthrie.
Thank you, Supervisor Stajka. I too concur with Trustee Opsmer's comments in regards to the 20,000 square feet. As I stare at it on this draft being crossed off, I don't like to see that. So I concur with that not going away and being eliminated. And then in regards to form-based code with peaked zones, I also concur with trying to extend that to those peaked zones. And I think that was a topic that we discussed, and if my memory serves me correctly, maybe Trustee Jackson brought that up during the joint session. Somebody brought it up. It wasn't me. Somebody brought it up, and I appreciate them bringing it up because I agree, whoever that was. Those are my only comments, other than being deeply appreciative of the time that the subcommittees have spent from the Planning Commission to take the time to put all of this together. Really appreciative of that.
I too like the idea of moving forward with the discussion of form-based code. I continue to think that we want it both ways in this board, though. And if we wanted to have form-based code, we got to let go of 25,000 square feet special use permits. So it's one way or the other. We can't put developers and staff through this process of form-based code and then say, well, we still want to see everything. We want to review it all and go through it with a fine-tooth comb like we do it the old-fashioned way. That's it. I don't want to start that discussion tonight, but there are trade-offs with form-based code that this board needs to be aware of if we're going to move forward with it. So I look forward to that discussion. Thank you.
That will definitely be coming up on the agenda very soon. All right. Anything else? Again, thank you for the report, Director and Schmidt, and I'll go on to our more in-depth discussion item, which is going to be the actual MUPUD ordinance as proposed by the Planning Commission. And for that, we'll keep Director Schmidt hanging around, I think. We'll start the discussion. Or first, let's hear something from Director Schmidt about it.
I certainly don't have a lot to add to the conversation at this point. I mean, we have, the Planning Commission has made a recommendation on the language to the board, and we have yet to formally publish it at the board level, so it's certainly all the time in the world for the board to propose amendments, suggest changes. Staff, even as I was going through it for this packet, found a couple more typos, corrections that need to happen just to clarify language. So we're certainly not at the point of final adoption or final language, but would be happy to discuss whatever changes or concepts the board would like this evening.
Let's get the discussion going. I see the treasurer's got his hand up.
Thank you. Under page 81, under definitions of amenities, I like how the Planning Commission has refined these quite a bit, thrown out some, added other ones like affordable housing. To me, the problem with the amenities, though, is qualitatively measuring them and how do they compare to other projects. And it's very subjective process, I understand, and particularly at the board level, even the Planning Commission level. MISTA deals with this all the time with tax credit properties, and we just got the Woodward Way project approved, and we under construction soon. MISTA for tax credit projects gets 2 or 3 applicants for every grant they've got, and they use a very specific, defined scoring process for those projects. I think we should attempt something like that with our amenities, where we have a universe, we'll say, of 200 possible points and a certain number per category. And before we see a project that has amenities that are asking for special consideration because they're amenities, staff is taking the time to give them a score. Doesn't mean that score can't be overridden by the board, but at least we have a starting point of that score. I mean, the score can start off coming from the applicant and then reviewed by staff, and then it comes to the board. So affordable housing could be a 10 or it could be a 1, depending on how much affordable housing they're offering. Is it all the units or just some of the units? Is it very low income, moderate income, or mix in between there? Awning is up there under amenity, but what is that really worth? Staff could look at the project and say, this is going to create a really amazing public space here, so it's worth 8 points rather than 2 points. So each of these areas where we've got amenities, I think they have to also have a score that helps us as the board and the planning commission as a board to review these amenities based on staff's review of it, so that when it comes to us, it's got a number associated with it. We can then override that, we can review that, we can argue with that, whatever, but we have a starting point for discussion, because this board doesn't have as much time as staff does, or the planning commission does, to review these and finally approve these. A scoring system would help us with that, and I think it might help us to get a better handle on what these amenities are worth. So that's my first input. And Director Schmidt, do you have any experience with scoring amenities of any kind?
I do. However, I will note that if you're going to establish a scoring matrix, the idea of being able to override it by staff or the planning commission or the board is antithetical to establishing such a system, because the idea would be that a developer has to get to 50 points, and here's your menu of points. How do I get there? So I think actually it's a little more, if you're looking for flexibility from a board's perspective, the way it's set up now actually has a little more flexibility, because the whether or not an amenity qualifies here or there, we can slide that around. Whereas if you go to a scoring system, it's very much going to be a flat, if I hit 50, here's what I qualify for in terms of bonus or variance or waiver, etc.
I understand that. So maybe it does have to be a hard and fast rules on these scoring environment, but it would be much more exacting, I think, than our 1, 2, or 3 that we have now. So we had a number that would be derived from lots of different scores that were part of this application.
Yeah, that's going to like a performance-based zoning system, and that's a different animal. Yep.
Thank you.
Try to keep, in order to move this forward as much as we can, let's try to keep our topics one at a time. So, Mr. Observer, if you have something on the scoring idea.
Yeah, I do, because I was actually going to come at this with the same kind of concept, well, slightly different concept, but the same issue. So first I wanted to ask Director Schmidt to make sure I've read the ordinance in its entirety and understand. So right now, we require them to have one amenity.
Correct.
Or if it's phased, each phase has to have one amenity. Then we require them to have one additional amenity for every variance. And in most of these cases, we're going to have a front yard, a backyard, and 2 side yard variances. We're going to have maybe some parking. We're going to have like 5, right?
Yeah, it kind of depends on how you design it. I mean, the question, there's going to be a financial question at some point. How much is it going to cost me to push this building up to the road?
Yep.
And is it going to be worth me putting in enhanced landscaping or additional green space, et cetera, or do I just meet the front yard setback?
But typically, it's going to be like 5 plus the 1 that they have to do, so that they only have to do 6 amenities.
That's a fair
and the amenity
baseline.
list, to Treasurer Deshane's point, has all this low-hanging fruit of stuff that just needs to be required, in my opinion. Some of this stuff could easily just be required. Covered bicycle parking, if it's mixed-use planned unit development, they're building at a density level where they could just do that if we really wanted. So I think we need to separate some of these into just what is required for an MUPUD versus what do you do to get that 18 units per acre density bonus, and how many amenities do you need? Like, we have a low bar. You don't need that many amenities to check all the boxes, because you only need like 6, maybe 7 to get the 18 units per acre density bonus and to get any and all variances that might be required for the site. And right now, the way that we have it structured, it is worth, how many points for like the top one is worth 3 amenities. So doing any of the top ones, so just doing a vertical mixing of land uses, like Red Cedar Flats would be a great example of one that meets that. Right there, they have half the amenities that they need, and it's defunct commercial space. We didn't really get anything out of it. That one didn't win for us. So, I would not have that by itself worth 3 points, and we need to have them accrue more points. So, I'm coming at it, I'm trying to troubleshoot the same problem that Treasurer Deshane is. but like it's a trade-off, like Director Schmidt said at the joint meeting, like we're kind of bartering with these folks. You know, they have to accrue points, but the ordinance sets out the rules in black and white fashion, and everybody abides by them. So I think maybe they need 2 points or 2 amenity points for every variance, you know, so they have to get up to like 12 or 14 points. And then we also need to look, because now we're giving multiple points for the first time for certain amenities. And a great counter example to Red Cedar Flats, where we have defunct commercial space and we would assign it 3 points here, is Aldi and the mixed use there. Now, yes, some people would like to see that stacked and to see it vertically integrated with the apartments above, but that was a win. We did get a grocer, it's active, it's not going anywhere. That is worth a lot more points just to get viable commercial space. And so what resulted in it being viable, it's really the gross floor area. The smaller the commercial space, the less likely it is to actually yield anything. So I really like, you know, amplifying that 25% requirement. 25% of the total gross floor area, you know, is a great one to assign more points to. But again, you can't give them all these low-hanging fruit points because they're never going to exercise that option, right? So we have to kind of optimize this. I haven't thought it all the way through, but vertical mixing of uses doesn't translate, so I don't think that's worth the top tier of points. Covered bicycle parking is not, I don't think that should really be worth points. You know, the low flow plumbing and the environmentally conscious plumbing and fixtures, that should be required in a mixed use because they have a density, and it's not going to disincentivize. Even the electric car charging stations, a lot of people are voluntarily going to at least putting in 1 or 2. And that's going to increase. You know, that's one where we could look at moving that possibly. So I'll just throw that concept out there without going through all of these. But I've started looking at like which one should be in the requirement bucket versus which should be, you know, which should actually be worth points, and how many points do we want the developer to be held accountable to get that density bonus and to get their variances, and do those actually make any sense? Are we ever going to get some of these? I set the affordable housing piece aside because that's just not remotely viable unless it's a MISTA project. And if it's a MISTA project, it really isn't going to come into play here a whole lot. So, I mean, that one's kind of not a huge one, and I think we also need to think about, you know, what do we want in an MUPUD like Newton Point, that's kind of up there on Saginaw and it's just off the beaten path, versus what do we want of an MUPUD on Grand River, because I think we want 2 different things. So I don't know how that, but I'll stick to the original assigning of points and how many points accrue. Thank you, Mr. Supervisor.
Other board members, so right now we're trying to talk about actually some concepts that have come forward, scoring in general, and then more specifically, perhaps some of the things that we have there are just what we're going to require in order to qualify for an MUPUD, and the bonus you get with that, and others that might qualify you for different waivers or variances, etc. Other comments, other thoughts on this general area of potentially scoring and weighting, etc. Director Schmidt, does this give you anything to go back to the Planning Commission with, or your staff with? I guess at this point, it'd be a staff issue, right? At this point.
Yeah, I mean, sir, I think what we could do is we could take a crack at a better scoring setup / some reworking of the amenity table based on the conversation that we've had. There's a couple things I need to look into. You know, I don't think we can require the plumbing items because that would be in excess of the building code, and single state building code means we can't have anything more stringent. That's, I think, why that one's an amenity, because it's trying to get it, whereas we can't require it. But certainly going to something like requiring a car charging station, we could treat that very similarly to the way we treat bike parking right now, and essentially provide it's not a waiver. It's essentially you can convert a limited number of parking spaces to bike parking spaces. So we could certainly look at something like that. But this is certainly a good starting point. I think the idea that I'm hearing from the board generally is there's a couple of things within the amenity table that need restructured. And candidly, I would agree there's a couple that I think are out of place and need to be moved around a little bit. Because just based on a pure economic perspective, I can probably predict the 6 points they would go after. Even with the limitation, because there is a limitation that you can only take one from the last category. But I could probably guess on most projects where they would end up. So I think there's a little bit of reworking there. And whether or not we go to a true scoring matrix or whether we increase the number of amenities you have to get, I have some work ahead of me, and I can work something up for the board to take a look at, or at least some options for the board to look at.
Very good. All right, other areas here we want to talk about with regard to MVP, the treasurer.
I'm going to defer to Clerk Guthrie, who's not yet spoken on this topic.
Thank you.
Well, her hand was a little slower than yours, but I would definitely call it Ms. Guthrie.
Thank you, Treasurer DeShane. Director Schmidt, how would you address what Trustee Opsimer said in regards to certain amenities or a tiered approach for specific areas of the township? How would you be able to address that?
Actually, I have an idea now.
I am open to any ideas because I'm not convinced this ordinance can do it.
So we could use the actual PICA boundaries, the CIA boundary, the DDA boundary. I guess for Okemos you'd use the DDA boundary, not the PICA boundary probably, but the other two PICA boundaries, and so you could cite those. And that's where commercial would be of a higher, somehow we need to structure it so that commercial is a factor in those areas, because what we don't want is our commercial cores to turn into residential only, right? But everywhere else, like Newton Point, or actually the other DTN, what we could incentivize for like max points, but keep the point system, somehow require them to get enough points and take enough things off that they have to do it. DTN already gave us the model. It's a mix of housing products. It's everything from single-family detached on up to traditional apartment buildings. And so instead of trying to say 25% of the gross floor area goes commercial, that's what we'd try to force their hand to do that in those areas, right? 3 PICAs, DDA, CIA. Everywhere else, you try to force the hand where they have to go for the max point option. They have to get that 3-point thing to get enough points. And then they can, and in those other areas, you make them do tiers of housing products, right? Townhomes, single-family detached, traditional apartments, so they can't just throw a whole bunch of the same product
Right.
covering the landscape up to the impervious max, because that market is going to drive it. And then we get a lot better product than the Planning Commission gets a lot better product to start from as we fine-tune, because any project that's before us, we impact usually only like, 2 to 5% impact. Some we can really overhaul and invert, like the gas station, but usually we're having a modest impact. But that would get those two distinct areas of the township, commercial
it'd be
core
like-
versus outlying, core areas.
It's like zoned MUPDs, like DDA,
Yeah. If you're in one of these
MUPD, like
districts,
PICA,
then-
MUPD. These are,
But you have
Okay,
to,
well, hold on. One speaker at a time, please. We can't have this. Go
Sorry.
ahead, Mr. Officer.
but
sorry.
you just got to try to take enough of those freebie points out and require them to get enough points that they have to go for that top thing. It's not like we're asking for something unreasonable, but yeah, if you're developing in the CIA, you can't just turn commercial, what is commercial today. You can use the air rights if you want to put some apartments up above, but you can't just convert it to apartment buildings, right?
Ms. Guthrie, you wanted to comment on it or
No,
questions of Mr. Officer?
I'm good. I was clarifying something with Trustee Opsmer in regards to like zoned MUPUDs. Is that what you heard, Director Schmidt, basically?
Yeah, and I think I know that this went over like a lead balloon at the joint meeting, but my suggestion at that point is we need, frankly, a residential PUD ordinance, because I don't think, one of the things I've picked up on very quickly here is there's certain areas of the township where we really don't want more commercial. We're trying to focus on our corridors, on our downtown to support those areas, whereas Newton Point, I hate to go back to Newton Point, I feel like I'm picking on them, but whether they have commercial or not, I think is irrelevant to most people's view of that project. So that's, certainly we could certainly take a fairly big swing here and restructure the way we look at sort of PUDs in general. It might take a little time, but there's certainly a path there. You essentially create some sort of additional bonus amenity system in the certain areas that you mentioned to push towards commercial, whereas the other areas can go straight residential with a mix of uses. Frankly, you're probably going to get you have more potential to get an affordable housing product that way if there's a mix of residential types where they don't have to carry the commercial on its own. It's a bigger undertaking, though. I will just be completely honest with you. So don't expect it at the next meeting.
Okay. Other areas, or we're still on this one? Treasurer.
Thank you. I agree with Trustee Opsmer in that there ought to be some of this in this list that just are core to any PUD. That they're just implicit there. Maybe the plumbing, low-flow plumbing can't be allowed in there because of state building code, but other ones perhaps we can include. They should just be part of any project that we're given this consideration for. And in reference to what you just said about taking some time, I'd rather take some time to get this right than to do something next month or 2 months and then end up with an inferior ordinance. And what we're really after here is the sweet spot. As I said earlier, we can't influence these projects tremendously, but we can improve them. We don't want the ordinary, the mundane on one extreme. If we legislate the perfect on the other side, the most elegant building that's also affordable, they'll never get built. So we're after this middle sweet spot there where we bring in as many amenities as we can, but it's still commercially viable for the developer to build in our township. And I think, Director Schmidt, your experience, you can help us to say, well, this ought to be just basic to any project. These are the movable pieces that a developer can viably add to a project to make it work. And we ought to be incentivized to add these to the projects. We're not going to ever have the dream project, but we can have better projects there. And I think we can find that sweet spot with your help. And so let's take the time we need to get this right so that when we are looking at these projects and these amenities, we can put a real value on them and know if we've got a winner or not.
Comments? I don't think anybody's trying to the finish line here. We're hoping to get good solid input first from the board and then the staff as they hear it and then discuss further. Director Schmidt, did you have something?
No, I'm reading through some things here.
Okay, all right. Other board members, anyone besides Mr. Officer and the treasurer or the clerk at this point? Back to Mr. Officer.
So just one item that I would flag that's on here that I think we could remove or modify. Well, I think we should modify and then put into like requirements is the transit stops. So CATA is going to advertising models, and so they are trying to get basically like if Meyer will pay to put in a new the new advertising model stop, they get like free ad rights to put their ads up for. And they can also give them the ability to advertise on the buses, whatever package it takes to get Meyer to build it and run the electrical conduit. So that can go under like a requirement is just work with CATA on whatever transit, options are necessary, I think, because CATA can get that, and that way we don't have to eat up our points getting something that they're already going to work on. So that's just one thing that I noticed that I would flag amongst those. Dedicated parking for e-scooters and other alternative mobility options. I think that needs to go into just requirements. Sidewalk planners also is something, I don't know that we would require that, but I mean, typically people do give us a pretty good landscaping plan and an idea. I don't know that that needs to be in there. So 3 things that I see that people are going to accrue 3 really easy points on right there. And I'll turn it back over.
Other board members, anything else in this, we want to go to a different subject? Yes, Ms. Guthrie.
I'd also like to see points given for solar on those bus stops or some kind of hotspot cover, something with those transit stop areas in regards to any kind of Wi-Fi hotspots or any kind of solar that allows them to stay connected, any kind of connectivity. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Do you know what I mean?
I understand where you're headed.
Okay, thank you.
What was that clarification? I couldn't quite hear you, Director.
I understand where she's headed here with that.
Okay, all right. Other ideas, things that you see in here that the staff should be looking at, bringing us some revisions or potential revisions. Jackson, anything? I called you Batiste.
Not at this point. In general, I would just say that one of the things I observed with the degradation of the impacts of the amenities we had before is that as time passed, many of those things became just modern conveniences that you would expect to appear in new developments. And in general, we need to eliminate those things that are likely to become. And I think, as has been said here, things like covered bike parking are those kinds of things, and lighting in transit stops by CATA are those kinds of things. And so we cheapen our expectation when we include those kinds of things that are very likely to become commonplace and expected in any new development.
Interesting point. Others? Anything else to discuss at this point, or we want to wait and see what comes back to us from Mr. Schmidt and his staff? Not seeing any hands. We may have played. Yes, Mr. Officer.
So just one other question. Have we talked to them all directly about their inclusion?
I have not spoken to them directly. I can check with staff and see if we previously talked to them. I suspect we have not, largely because of COVID and them going through bankruptcy as an ownership group, but I think this gets to one of the points that I will certainly be making as part of the comprehensive plan update next year, is that the mall is there, but we need to plan for what's next, because I think everyone realizes that enclosed malls, especially those not on a major interstate, are dinosaurs, and they are likely to change in many ways in upcoming years. So I think this was the Planning Commission probably just trying to plan ahead for that a little bit, but I will follow up and find out.
Again, Dan?
Yeah, I was just going to say, because I know I talked to them all recently, and rather than looking at like outlying development, when they look at residential uses, they've been looking at like repurposing or demolishing the anchor stores and then building connected footprints so they might have some thoughts to share with us on this, but, I believe we're lifting the height requirement in here for the mall, right?
It would be they would still have to provide for that allowance through their amenities. It would not be by right.
Yep. But we're giving them the same height restrictions that we applied to downtown.
We're giving them the
openness.
flexibility to get there, yes.
And so, they're also, I don't know how their intent fits into what we're doing, but basically I had always envisioned a ring of residential around it. They don't want to block any sight lines to the mall itself. So they're looking at just building off the existing footprint. But the good news is that giving them that additional height because of the huge setback that they have certainly makes it, the scale is much smaller, right, when you have that setback, so that's good. And then I noticed that we also, so we're requiring a traffic study when we exceed 50 vehicle trips during peak hours instead of 100?
That is a recommendation, yes.
Okay. Does staff recommend that? 100 captures pretty much anything, right? Even if we just kept it at 100, we're capturing almost anything.
You are capturing a lot. To be
a basic strip mall would require a traffic study.
I'm a planner that doesn't believe necessarily in traffic studies, especially when you don't have control of your roads. If we're in a position where a major traffic user is coming in, they are what they need to do to the public right away is largely going to be dictated by the road department. They're going to say you have to put in X turn lane and X deceleration lane. It has to be X big based on their standards. A traffic study, rezoning is a completely different question, because a rezoning, you really are comparing hypothetical land uses and you don't know what's coming. But when you get to the point of an actual project, that the impact of that traffic study is going to be dictated from the county, not from us. So I am not a huge believer in traffic studies in general. But yes, to your point, 100 cars is going to pick up the vast majority of projects. 50 cars will, I think, probably pick up every project.
Everything, yeah. We're going from 99.5 to 100.
99.9, yeah. I mean, you're basically there.
Yeah, because my understanding is basically just like a one-use commercial outfit is going to require that.
At 50, probably.
Yeah.
I could think of a couple that wouldn't, but not many.
I'd be open to staff's input on what other communities do and how they set that. I just don't think we're getting much utility. I get it when there's a rezoning or when there's a larger scale project. If we're talking, 12,000 square foot facility, that's much different. But if we're talking a, 3,000 or 4,000 square foot storefront, we're not, the impact on a roadway like Grand River is a drop in the bucket. So,
yes.
Those are the only other questions I had. Thank you.
Yes, Treasurer.
To follow up on Trustee Oppenheimer's comment, and generally speaking, as a relatively new director, I too would welcome your input on various topics. And we in the past, I think of the previous director, he was very good about being, if you will, agnostic on most issues and didn't really express an opinion. And again, this board has a limited amount of time to analyze these very important decisions, and we rely on the township manager for his opinions on things. We rely on the assessor for their opinion. We rely on the police chief and the fire chief for their opinions on things. I don't think it necessarily is a bad thing for you to express an opinion on some development issue to this board. We benefit from your sharing your expertise and your staff expertise in these development issues. If we have the right to accept it or reject it, but
Absolutely.
if we don't know it, we don't have that option. So I want to encourage you, from this board member's perspective anyway, to share those input and opinions where you feel necessary.
Appreciate that. And I hope that the board always knows where I stand on a project, whether you like it or not.
Thank you.
Just to follow up on that, your predecessor was excellent in doing stuff but he prefer that not necessarily insert himself necessarily. So I don't see it as inserting yourself. You tell us your experiences and what things have led to where they go, etc. Your expertise.
Understood.
All right. Anyone else? Mr. Opsper.
So when we get to the major minor amendment section, sorry, I'm just flipping through my notes. First, the vehicle trips get struck again here, and we go from 100 to 25. So I'd be similarly interested in what other communities are doing in your expertise on, because we're capturing just about anything there. But when we get to item I, because this is kind of where we get to what happened with downtown Okemos, I'm not quite sure I'm reading this right. So any reduction in non-residential space in a building by 25% of the usable floor area or greater. So is that saying that to trigger a major amendment, there would have to be a reduction of 25% of just the non-residential space, or? So like if there was 40,000 square feet, and it's page 23. It's item I in the middle of the page.
So it would be 25% reduction of the non-residential space, because usable floor area is only going to come into play for non-residential space.
Okay,
Yeah.
That's what I wasn't clear about, why we were using the term usable floor area or greater. It seemed
So
like.
someone doesn't try and play a game with between gross and net floor area on us.
Okay.
So you're trying to define the term now so that they know exactly what the expectation is. It's the usable floor area as defined in our ordinance.
So what this is saying, is regardless of what they do with any residential uses,
Correct.
if they cut the commercial space by 25%, then it triggers the major amendment.
Correct.
Okay.
And the changes to the amendment process, I think it's very clear, were largely written in response to what was happening with the Village of Okemos. So all of those changes that you read are in the backdrop of that happening. So
Yeah.
that's why it went to 25 vehicle trips. That's why it went to 25% reduction in usable floor area. So
Yeah, we saw it with elevation too, and we've
Yeah.
seen it with a few projects, but, okay, I just wanted to make sure I wasn't quite clear on the usable floor area. Thank you.
Other clarifications or comments? Put this on as soon as we get something back from Mr. Schmidt.
we've got some homework ahead of us.
What's that?
I've got some homework ahead of
What do you
me.
say? You do. I'm afraid that's more often true than not for your office.
Absolutely.
All right, board members, then we'll move on to comments from the public. Our public lead. Do we have any call-ins anywhere or anything like that? I guess since it wouldn't be the case. So it's only Courtney and I that are not. All right. Then we will move on to other matters from board members. Courtney Wazinski.
Supervisor, I should have done this at the beginning, as you did. I didn't say, I'm attending virtually due to health reasons and possible COVID exposure. So just to be in compliance with the Open Meetings Act, I'm not sure it needs to be in the clerk's notes.
Thank you for that. Any other final comments from board members? Yes, Trustee Jackson.
Yes, I realized that I misspoke when we were talking about the rezoning on Saginaw Highway. I said that the Planning Commission had recommended approval of the rezoning. I believe what in fact happened was the Planning Commission did not have a decision. They had kind of a deadlock. And so I just wanted to clarify that point.
It was actually the Jodan item that the Planning Commission deadlocked on.
I see.
They unanimously did recommend the Saginaw Highway rezone.
Great, okay. Thanks.
Thanks for the clarification. Dan.
Yeah, since we're on zoning ordinance stuff, I just wanted to make note for the board on one other thing. Chair Hendrickson of the Planning Commission made reference to this very briefly at our joint meeting, but, and I'm sure Trustee Jackson is probably going to be familiar with this issue, having served on the ZBA for so long. So just in the last 6 months, we've had 2 zoning requests for homes in the Lake Lansing Overlay District. And so the way that overlay district ordinance worked, zoning ordinance worked, there's a number of streets, including East Lake Drive, where the front yard setback is 85 feet, whereas we laxed the setbacks on the front yard on nearly all the other streets. There's 4 or 5 streets listed out where we don't lax that. And so we continuously get people coming forward, or at least recently we've had a number of them, because people have to request a variance if they're on one of those roadways. And it's interesting when you look at it, because to have an 85-foot front yard setback on the northern end of the lake, where Lake Drive is only 120 feet from the edge of the water of the lake, and there's a home between, obviously. So that's another thing that we're looking at, some tweaking and adjusting to that ordinance, so that these homeowners, especially in the cottage neighborhood there on Shaw Street and Potter Street, et cetera, where we have older homes, and we want to encourage people to invest in those homes and not to, simply demolish and try to work within the very bizarre constraints that they have for setbacks. That's a good neighborhood to incentivize people, and they're very small homes. These are not homes of huge square footage. So basically, we allowed for, the mansions to be built on Tier 1 in most places, although some of those are non-compliant too. But then there's these other homes in Tier 2 that are really constrained under that ordinance. So I just wanted to flag and give a little bit more detail for board members on that, because Director Schmidt and I did talk about that after the last ZBA meeting, and that's just another one that probably needs to be updated in some time. But for right now, the ZBA is just going to take in the approach of allowing the homeowners on those 4 streets to, we've been approving homeowners on those 4 or 5 streets outlined.
And just to follow up on that, staff actually, we started talking about it today, and we're going to try and put together some options for the ZBA and Planning Commission to start thinking about in the near future here of how to address this, because we agree it's a problem when you treat one set differently than another.
Any other board members, final comment? Yes, Clerk Guthrie.
All right, 2 things real quick. One is my husband and I went to the music at the marketplace last Wednesday. It's fantastic. So if you have a chance, go out on Wednesday night. It's really good music if you can make it to the new marketplace on the green. And then 2, I want to commend our fire chief. I meant to do this earlier, for the outdoor warning sirens and the coverage that you and your team are doing to make sure that all of the township is covered. And I asked him a couple questions before the meeting began about some of the coverage sites and that I was looking at on the map, and I have every bit of confidence that he's making sure that all of Meridian Township is covered, and he's moving some things around just a little bit. So if you happen to see that coverage map floating around and you see a couple sections that maybe don't look like they may be covered when some new sirens come out, that is not true, because he's changing things up to make sure everyone's covered. So thank you for doing that, so that we can all hear those warning sirens.
I want to mention, we had the citizen come in earlier about the D&D situation, and we had looked at this a couple years ago. We started working towards an ordinance, perhaps, or some regulation of these temporary rentals, and we kind of dropped it. We never came to any consensus on it. So that's something that maybe we can ask our staff to be thinking about, looking forward to seeing something with regard to those two, these kinds of facilities in the township. And where and if we might want them. Anything else? If not, then we need to have a motion to adjourn. Jackson. You had something else? Yes.
Yeah, just in reading over the manager's semi-annual report, I think I noted that the survey, the end of the first wave of the survey is on the 24th. And I just wanted to take the opportunity to encourage people who have them to send them back. I know my husband does, and he hasn't. And so just to remind people that the 24th is the last day, or the end of what I understand is the first wave of that survey that has been mailed out to residents. And I would encourage people to return them.
Excellent reminder. Okay. So we still need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Support.
Moved by the treasurer, supported by. Any objection? Then we're adjourned.
Once again, Derek's in the seat, and we'll get done early.
He's got a pack or whatever he's doing.
I thought it was Nick, that's the sharp looking paddle.
I didn't ask him much about that. Yeah. Couldn't wait for the phone call. Right.
Once you make a decision, you're sorry,
It's pretty problematic. Having issues. You can just write that one up. Probably best. Get used to that, yeah. Having a big conversation. Yes. That allows appreciation. Oh man, terrible.
I think you make that point where you require, and maybe it's not 25%, because like if they want to build a lot of units, we make how we structure it, so that's a 25% versus floor.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Elena Cousineau. The August 17th Township Board meeting just adjourned. Here is the post-meeting report on what happened during the meeting. Township Manager Frank Walsh presented the 2021 Township Semi-Annual Report, which detailed the Township's goals for the future. The Board approved all 3 action items on the agenda tonight, including the appointment to the Environmental Commission. Lastly, Director of Community Planning and Development Tim Schmidt gave a summary of the joint meeting between the Township Board and the Planning Commission, which includes the mixed-use planned unit development ordinance, which has been under review since late 2020. Tune in to the next Township Board meeting on September 7th. If you have any questions or comments about Home TV's programming, please contact us at 517-349-1232 or visit us online at hometv.net. I'm Elena Cousineau, and on behalf of everyone here at Home TV, thanks for watching and have a great night.